thanks to the Honorable Tom Andrews for his video, his Prisoner of Hope. That's a wonderful expression, I think, to use in lieu of optimism, because I think we all do hold hope that the situation will improve, and gentlemen like Mr. Andrews are certainly a vanguard in that effort. Next, it is my great pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Gregory Stanton, who is joining us again this year. He is the president of Genocide Watch, a research professor in genocide studies and prevention at George Mason University. He's also well known for his work as the founder and president of Genocide Watch, the founder and director of the Cambodian Genocide Project, the founder and chair of the International Campaign to End Genocide. Dr. Stanton has also served as president of the International Association of Genocide Scholars. He's traveled to be with us all the way from Washington, D.C., so please give a warm West Coast welcome to Dr. Gregory Stanton.
It's a great honor for me to be with you again. I remember very well the last time I was here with you, and I think it was really one of those times that has changed history, because what came out of it was a recognition by a lot of human rights groups and a lot of other people in the United Nations, the U.S., Congress, and elsewhere, that what is happening in Myanmar to the Rohingya people is genocide. It's genocide. It is not anything less than that. And I think that is why it's so important for us to keep repeating that basic fact. It is not something that happens instantly. Genocide doesn't always happen in huge death camps, like the death camps that Hitler built. It can be a gradual process in which people are put into concentration camps and starved and kept from having health care, in which women bleed to death after giving birth. It's a gradual process of the destruction of a people. And that is exactly what is happening to the Rohingya people in Myanmar today. I want to talk to you a little bit about that process, because it's one that we've studied at Genocide Watch now for 15 years. It seems to be characteristic of every genocide that I have studied, in fact. And you may remember that we have actually analyzed it as a stage process. In other words, you can actually see it logically. You can understand how it develops. Persecution of the Rohingya people began over 50 years ago. Since a brutal military junta took power in Burma in 1962, all rights of ethnic minorities in the Burman-dominated state have been nullified. In 1982, the Burmese law on citizenship excluded Rohingya from all civil and human rights. Classification is the first stage of the genocidal process. What Myanmar, or what was then called Burma, did was it changed the classification system. It reclassified Rohingya as not being Burmese citizens. It is exactly what Hitler did when he reclassified the German population to exclude Jews from German citizenship in the 1935 Nuremberg laws. This law that was passed in 1982 stripped Rohingya of citizenship. And that means simply they have no rights. Without citizenship, you have no rights. The second stage of genocide is civilization, and that stage has also been implemented now. Burmese national identity cards were taken away from the Rohingya Rohingya some years ago, as you know. And now, not even their white voting rights cards are left with them. They have been confiscated too. They will not be allowed to be used to vote in this upcoming election. That is what is called a stripping of symbolization of identity. Rohingya candidates will not even be able to run for the election, and Rohingya will not be allowed to vote. The third stage of genocide discrimination has been enforced by removing all Rohingya from public employment, from the army, from their right to attend school, to receive health care, or even to leave Rakhine State. What we have here is a police state. We have a totalitarian police state. Things haven't gotten better in Myanmar, despite this illusion that the Myanmar regime is trying to project that it is democratizing. On the contrary, things for the Rohingya are getting worse. The fourth stage of genocide, which is dehumanization, and we've heard that spoken about by the UN representatives. It needs to be dealt with back there. Yeah. So if you would deal with this, please. There's feedback. This dehumanization took an ugly turn in 1991 when Rohingya were reclassified as illegal aliens from Bangladesh. And over 250,000 fled to Bangladesh to escape the ensuing violence against them. The fifth stage of genocide, which is organization, developed especially seriously in 2012 and 2013 in a racist 929 movement led by extremist Buddhist monks and militias organized mass killings of the Rohingya. It took the SS to commit the Holocaust. Well, it is taking the 929 movement to get ready to commit genocide against the Rohingya. The sixth stage, polarization, has driven even moderate Buddhists to fear opposing the Buddhist extremists. Nobel Peace Prize winner Aung San Suu Kyi has been cowed into silence, and militants have even accused her of being pro-Muslim. Not wanting her party to lose the elections, she has cowered in fear, despite calls from the Dalai Lama and President Obama to speak out. I repeat what I said last year. Unless Aung San Suu Kyi speaks out against this genocide against the Rohingya, she should return her Nobel Prize. The seventh stage of genocide is preparation. Preparation for genocide is already well underway. Not only are the Rohingya in concentration camps and detention camps, but in full public view at the UN General Assembly itself. In 2014, Myanmar's Foreign Minister, Wuna Maung, revealed the, quote, Rakhine State Action Plan, unquote, which includes, understand this, actually said this at the UN, it includes the relocation into detention camps and the forced displacement of all Rohingyas from their homes. That, folks, is called forced displacement. It is a crime against humanity. The people who are planning this should be taken to the International Criminal Court for crimes against humanity and genocide. genocide, persecution is now, thank you very much, that helps a lot. It's now underway. All Rohingyas are forcibly displaced from Sittwe now, and are now in these detention camps. Hundreds have been murdered. We now have evidence, indisputable evidence, of truckloads of Rohingya bodies that have been dumped into rivers and were floating down the rivers. Eyewitness testimony. It reminds me of what happened in Indonesia in 1965 and 66. The concentration camps are deprived of food and even basic medical care. This story of Muhammad that Matt Smith just told you tonight is only one example of that. My wife is a nurse midwife. She has delivered hundreds of babies around the world. And in fact, she is in charge of our maternal survival programs for the U.S. government around the world. My wife can tell you that one simple medicine, which is called misoprostol, which is an anti-hemorrhage medicine, could have saved this woman's life. And it consists of just 3 pills, and the woman could have taken it herself. And yet not one doctor in any of those hospitals, including the Sittwe Hospital, was willing to give her that medicine that could have saved her life. And we don't even know if Rohanna's alive today. That, my folks, is a crime against humanity. And so now we have reached the 9th stage, extermination, actual genocide. Since last year, over 140,000 Rohingya have gotten into rickety boats to escape from Myanmar. Many have drowned at sea. Yet the nations of ASEAN violated their obligations under the UN Conventions on Refugees and turned them back to sea, where they're preyed upon by pirates and human traffickers who sell them into slavery and prostitution. Mass graves filled with Rohingya bodies have now been found in the jungles of Thailand and Malaysia. If this is not evidence of genocide, what is? It is the turning back of Jewish refugees all over again during another Holocaust. In this country, we turned back ships that were filled with Jewish refugees right in Miami, in this country. Over 1,000 Jewish refugees on the ship St. Louis, and we turned them back from Miami Harbor. They could have landed. Instead, they were forced to go back to Europe. They were all taken off to St. Louis, and we now know that nearly all of those people were taken to Auschwitz and murdered. That is called genocide, and that is what is happening today. And is now, we are just been told by Tom Andrews, my colleague, that it's likely to happen again, and it's going to be even worse. I was in Kuantan, Malaysia in 1979 during another boat people crisis. My wife and I were on our way from spending a year in India, where I had spent a year with the Indian Law Institute. And we had decided to go back via many countries through Southeast Asia. And one of the places we wanted to see was Kuantan, where the famous sea turtles come up to lay their eggs at a certain time of year. And I got up very early one morning, and I looked up on the horizon, and there was a boat up on the horizon, and I could see it more clearly and more clearly as it came closer and closer to shore. And on top of that boat, there must have been 100 people standing up on top of that boat, small boat. And I said, I bet this is one of the Vietnamese boat people I've been reading about. Because that was when the Vietnamese boat people were fleeing from Vietnam. And sure enough, that boat came into Kwantung Harbor. It came ashore, the people jumped off the boat. They came in, this time not brought by traffickers, but by another person who wanted to escape from Vietnam. And the captain came ashore with the people. And I went up to him, and I was able to speak French. And he also spoke French, and I told him, you have to do one thing immediately. I'm going to call the UNHCR, the UN High Commissioner for Refugees. I will call them and get them down here before the Malaysian police come down here and put you all back on this boat and send you back out to sea, because that was what the Malaysian authorities were doing then. But you have to do something also. You go out, you take that boat back out to sea, and you get in your lifeboat, and then you burn your boat. And he did it. And so those refugees made it safely into Malaysia. Now that is the kind of action that we are going to need to head off this coming boat people crisis. We're going to need firm action by the nations in that whole region in ASEAN. And thank goodness they're now beginning to take notice. Malaysia has complained about this. Turkey has complained. Pakistan has complained. Indonesia has complained. These were countries that were turning back refugees only a year ago. Now they're saying, we will take the refugees if you will help us. And so now we need to pass this legislation in which we, the richest country on earth, will say to them, we will help you. We will give you the resources to keep these Rohingya people alive until they can return to their own country or to some other country, wherever they wish. And the second thing I say, let the United States welcome a lot more Rohingya people to this country. Do you know that we have a quota in the United States in which we only accept 65,000 political asylees per year? Did you know that? Sometimes it's exceeded on individual bases, but it's very seldom met, actually. Why is it so low? It's ridiculous. It is as low as it was during the Holocaust. That was the quota during the Holocaust. And we didn't even fulfill it then. Why are we not the same nation that welcomed my ancestors to this country without any restrictions? That in 1900 welcomed over 1 million immigrants into the United States freely, no restrictions, no questions asked, except at Ellis Island to take your name down, usually misspelled. This is the country of immigrants. We are blessed with immigrants. We are blessed with you. I thank God that you have come to our country because you have brought the richness of your culture to us. And so, of course, what we must do is also what Tom Andrews has said. We must use our diplomatic muscle because this is still a country that has plenty of it. And we must place as much pressure as we can on Myanmar and explain to the leaders of Myanmar, if you want good relations with us, you give full citizenship to every Rohingya in your country. And secondly, we must demand that Myanmar stop its official discrimination and persecution of the Rohingya, and that it must arrest and hold the perpetrators of human rights abuses and this kind of genocide against the Rohingya accountable, and also, especially, hold those who are inciting genocide, such as the extremist monks who lead that movement that has led this racist 929 group. And
969.
969 group. And indict them, because it is a crime against humanity and it is a crime against the law of genocide to incite people to commit genocide. In fact, my own view is Myanmar has been a party to the Genocide Convention since 1949. It was one of the first countries to ratify the Genocide Convention after it was passed in 1948 by the United Nations. Myanmar is subject to that convention, and it should be taken to the people who are doing this genocide should be taken to the International Criminal Court for their crimes. We can discuss how that can be done, perhaps during the discussion, but it is possible to do it. And finally, I would argue this. It is time for the UN Human Rights Council, a council that is not controlled by the veto of the great power five in the UN Security Council. The UN Human Rights Council, which is under the authority of the General Assembly, not the UN Security Council, should have a commission of inquiry to go to Myanmar and investigate with full power what is happening to the Rohingya, and to come out of there and recommend to the rest of the world the actions that need to be taken to stop this terrible genocide. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Stanton.